Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings to everybody. Hopefully this works properly now because we've got cut off, didn't we?
It is live.
Right, it is live. Hopefully, yeah, good. Basically, we're going to talk about grooming gangs and other topics as well.
My name is Shaykh Abdul Hameed. I'm an Islamic scholar, classically trained. My background is in psychology and in social sciences.
Psychology, wow. Cool. So basically, I've not done this for quite a while. It's been a few months since I've done this. So this is the first one I've done in a few months, to be honest with you. And I've always wanted to tackle this issue about grooming gangs. Now, a lot of people out there are saying grooming gangs and Islam are interconnected because those idiots, those dirty, evil people, I don't want to swear because I don't swear usually, but I feel like swearing. Those evil, disgusting, nasty individuals, they're all ugly as well. You've seen the photographs of them. They're not good looking, are they? You know what I mean? They're all ugly. Anyway, I don't want to swear. The point is, right, these, because they've got Muslim names, people associate these wankers, sorry, excuse my language, I didn't want to swear, these idiots, right, with Islam. Yeah. Now, you're a sheikh, you know more than I do. So I thought I'd bring him on here to explain that grooming gangs and rape is not permissible in Islam.
I think start from the beginning is that absolutely nothing justifies raping, abusing, exploiting anybody, and especially vulnerable young girls. And the problem is, like I said, is that when these people start conflating the two, from these people's pedophilia and connecting it and justifying it theologically, there's absolutely no basis on this tradition. And like I said, before we even go to the theology behind it, be very, very, very clear. Our thoughts and prayers are with those victims. And I pray to God, especially those Oxford gang that recently got convicted
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
You see the photographs of them?
Yeah, man, sickening. I pray to God that God punish them in this world.
Ameen.
For causing such havoc in the life of these innocent people.
Ameen.
And this, like I said, it's got nothing to do with the Islamic tradition, mainstream, normative, orthodox Islam. And also, let me make it clear is that these people don't wake up in the morning and think, you know what, let me see what's the most amazing thing to do and how can I get close to God in terms of proximity.
No,
and then one guy just says, oh, let's just go rape girls because that's what God wants us to do. These people have no... I think the only thing that they are connected to Islam is that they happen to be born in Muslim households.
Yeah.
And as a result, and even the names, you know, like Hussein, Al-Islam, and Muhammad, and this and that, I mean...
Yeah, but the thing is, what I say is, look, there's people out there got Christian names like Peter, John, Luke, but because they commit a crime, doesn't mean that they're associated with Christianity, is it?
Absolutely.
Same with the...
But also be clear, and this is my stance on it, is that Islam is not the victim here. And I think sometimes when people talk about grooming gangs and sensitive issues, they spend more time kind of disassociating the crimes from Islam than actually focusing on who the victims are. That the victims in this situation are the poor young girls. And those are the... I mean, I wish there was more outreach work being done. We'll be discussing that later on in terms of... This is the 7th paedophile ring now to be busted.
7?
But from the
I'm sure it's more, you know.
Is it so far? Exactly. I think
there's been about 200 convictions. I've got a funny feeling that there's going to be more.
And it's shocking.
Because they've been getting away for so many bleeding years because of lack of what the police are doing, and lack of the social services. They've been letting them get away with it. Let them get away with it. And they think they're untouchables.
One of the worst cases
like the mafia or something.
in Rotherham up north is when one of the paedophile gangs got busted. And the counsellor actually goes into court in order as mitigating, to give him like a character reference.
What?
You read about it. A counsellor actually goes into court and says, you know, these people are decent people and they should get a bit of a lenient sentence. It's just absolutely... The number one objective, I would say, of the Quran is to uphold justice. اِعْدِلُوا وَأَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Allah says in the Quran that justice is the most important thing. The Quran says even if it's against your own parents, or عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ, even if it's against yourself. The fact that you lie just to get yourself out of trouble, the Quran highly condemns that. When we're on the side of justice, put religion aside, put ethnicity aside, put tradition, culture, everything aside.
Absolutely.
No religion, no tradition, and you don't have to even follow any religion to know that this is wrong.
Of course it is.
It's just basic moral.
It's just
human beings.
The
fact that we understand the importance of humanity, respect, and they're insane all that. Like I said, my background is in psychology, so I can just, somewhat empathize with how these girls may be struggling and coping with some of these issues. Is that some of these girls were the most vulnerable. So these girls were already in care, so they come from families that were struggling, or they've been separated, or the parents have now, the children have been taken into care. So they've had a very, very, very unstable upbringing, and now the tender age in the early teens.
Talking about from 11.
It is absolutely shocking, and even how the grooming starts from the beginning process. The whole grooming process is, we got this little kebab Indian
takeaway thing.
shop thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And now you give them free food and stuff, and then asking them for favors and then hooking them onto drugs. You saw that documentary 3, right? Those girls. I mean, that's the thing which, I mean, if you look at Darren Osborne and all those things that he was talking about.
That's why a lot of the working class, well, any human being, it's back. Keeps dropping. I don't know what's the signal around it.
I'm saying this.
I was angry, and
I feel so pissed off. When I say pissed off, I'm like, words can't even express and articulate how angry I feel, and how sorrowful I am to the victims. That I feel embarrassed. I have to even share a faith with these idiots.
I know, same here. And constantly try and defend ourselves over this small minority of people. There's got 3.5 million Muslims in Britain.
4% of the UK population.
4%, and out of that, 200 odd. I don't even want to call them Muslims. I don't know what to call them, right? But 200 idiots, right? These evil people. People say, okay, all Muslims are pedos. Basically, they look at me and you're walking down the street. If they've got a little girl, it's like you don't know, do you? I don't want to be classed as a pedo. Do you? Because the action of these idiots is. I don't want to swear.
I think that is the issue, is that when, like I said, when the whole community ended up getting tarnished. But let me also point out is that one of the key prosecutors for these paedophile grooming gangs was a Pakistani Muslim. I believe his name is the prosecutor was Abdul.
The only problem is when they get 20 years or they get 15 years, but they're out in 4 or 5 years on good behaviour. Are they going to do it again?
And we talk about prison, what happens within the prisons, and how sometimes I mean, like I said, there's a disproportionate amount of Muslims. Muslim population in prison is about 15% of the prison population. Looking at the demographics of 4% overall, that's massively disproportionate. And there are issues, and I do watch Tommy Robinson, and I look at some of the issues that he highlights. He
has some points.
I disagree with him in terms of how he goes about highlighting some of these issues, and sometimes his speech is very inflammatory, and
xenophobic. He has some good points, though.
But the points that he's raising are absolutely valid in terms of there's a disproportionate amount of these people who happen to be abusing young girls. And we as a community as a whole, not just something which is exclusive, that Muslims have to do this, or only like the social service should be dealing with it. I think collectively as a society we fail these girls.
The problem is, right, I don't know who they are. Do you know who they are?
I have no idea who they are.
I mean, Leicester, if there is a grooming gang in Leicester, I hope there's not one, but if there was one, I wouldn't know who they are. There's 40,000 Muslims in Leicester, 50,000 maybe touching it. Out of those, it's going to be a small gang of 4 or 5 people. They do it secretly. They do it behind closed doors. Probably the wives and kids don't even know what they're doing. How do you catch these thieves? I mean, these evil people.
I think it's really important to highlight, first of all, in terms of grooming and sex gangs and looking at child protection. Highlighting means is that in the masjid there should be khutbahs, there should be sermons happening. I'm not saying that these paedophiles come to the mosque and all of a sudden they hear an amazing lecture and they change their life. No, what I'm saying is that if you look in the case of the documentary that I looked in these 3 girls, one of the reasons why some of these groomers were caught is because somebody from the public spotted that an elderly man was walking with a young English white girl, and they realized that was odd, and just that, them contacting social services sparked off the investigation that broke down some of these pedophiles. So the fact that we're raising awareness, what looks abnormal, why would people be hanging around in some of these shops, and why are they out late? In one of these cases, the police actually stopped some of these paedophile groomers whilst they were driving. The girls were in the car, and the police don't even ask what the girls doing in the car.
The social service and the police said these young girls were like prostitutes. They didn't give a shit about them.
No, but what disgusts me. Do you think it's overly cultural sensitivity, or is it's neglect?
They didn't give a shit. They didn't give a
100%.
shit. Basically, they didn't give a shit.
No, but do you think social service sometimes, back in those early 2000s, late 90s, felt uncomfortable sometimes going into the community because they don't want to? I don't know. What the heck it is. I
just think it's just a flipping their lack of intervention. They throw the racism card. They say, it's racist if we say this. Let's just face the fact: the majority of these groomers, 99% maybe, are from Pakistan. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to put my hands up.
From these groomers, these specific groomers, the 7 gangs that have been busted, they were not all Pakistani.
There were a couple of Bengalis.
Yeah, maybe. A fair amount of them were Pakistani. Is a disproportionate. When you look at statistics in terms of most of the paedophiles, obviously there would be white because of the population when you're looking at the demographics. But when you're looking at the disproportionate amount relative to the amount of Muslims that are in the UK, is staggeringly high within the community, and that's what's problematic. And what really annoys me, and like I said, I'm saying this as an Imam, I'm saying this openly. What annoys and frustrates me is that when you want to have some of these honest discussions and talk about some of these social taboos, people want to throw the card. Oh no, it's Islamophobic. It's not Islamophobic to talk about this stuff.
It's not.
Islamophobia means an irrational fear for something. There's no irrationality here. And we shouldn't be closing down discussion because we have to talk about uncomfortable things.
We can't bury our heads in the sand. We can't, as a community, we can't do that. We need to find these people out and we need to grass them up, give them a few digs as well.
And the problem is some of these issues, like I said, then the extremists from both sides of the polls, the Islamist extremists and the far-right nationalists will use incidents like this to kind of point score over each other, so that the victims are the ones who are actually neglected. Nothing's actually being done.
True.
Media hijacks the whole situation, and then these guys will say, Muslims are like this, they've come here, this is what they do. And then these guys turn around and say, well, these people don't like you, and this is how they treat us, and all jihad and the rest of the BS.
Let's look at some questions here. I've got grooming gangs come in all faiths, just Muslims being made as scapegoats for the masses.
No, they do come in all faiths, but like I said, there are a disproportionate amount. They come, like I said, paedophilia, terrorism has no faith, has no culture, has no tradition. You even see within the Christian Catholic tradition and how many priests abused young boys. It happens. But my point is that when now it's happening in a modern world where there's a disproportionate amount of people, there has to be something done about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Why is it that the BBC and political grooming gangs, where it's been covered up, does the media never mention their religious beliefs or cultural perpetrators? That's from Tim Knott.
I think it's again, it's two extremes. One, sometimes, like the Telford grooming, in my opinion, did not get enough media attention. So this, to some extent, sometimes almost like you hiding away. What is it, some kind of leftist agenda or not? And then we have other media outlets who will put openly on the title Muslim pedophiles, like Muslims. Like, what the heck does Muslim have to do with pedophiles?
Because you've got Muslim names. They come out the narration that the Prophet, peace be upon him, married a young girl. Now, there's many different opinions upon this. I believe she was 17, 18. She was not 6 or 9.
We've gone to this issue. We've discussed it through our sources. And if you look into it, there's, in fact, my good friend Mufti Abdul, he's on YouTube. You can check him, the age of Aisha. There's historical evidence clearly to suggest that she was not the age that people claim that she was. In fact, she was 18. And if you look into this, and this is not me just giving you, people are now accusing of taqiyya and hiding some kind of stuff.
We don't practice taqiyya.
We don't do that.
No.
But look into the historical fact. There's nothing in Islam that permits grooming or taking advantage of vulnerable young girls. And the Quran in Surah Nur, chapter 24, verse 33. Google some of this stuff. Chapter
20 what?
24, verse 33.
24, 33.
Allah says, وَلَا تَكْرِهُ فَتَيَاتِكُمْ عَلَى الْبِغَاءِ, that don't force and compel fatayatikum, means young girls, into prostitution. The verse is as explicit and as clear. There were actually gangs, like prostitution gangs that were happening, that were taking place. And some of these young girls were being forced, and they actually came to the Messenger of God and complained that we feel that we've been forced into the situation. We are believing in God. What are we supposed to do? And God condemned this practice within the scripture. And one of the biggest opponents of Islam at the time was the one who was running some of these grooming gangs, Abu Lahab specifically.
Right.
And the Quran highly condemned this. So, like I said, there's absolutely nothing in our tradition that would even justify. Now, somebody's mentioning here that people are talking about child grooming gangs. Now, there are cultures. For example, when I say cultures and I'm naming culture, I don't mean everyone belonging to that culture do practice that. But if you're looking at, for example, in the ethnography meaning the social customs and society within a region, if you look, for example, Yemen, traditionally they actually get the girls married very, very, very young. There are places in India, right, when their child brides and marriages. I mean, this is all these are cultural issues.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, can I do this? Is Islamically permissible?" Or absolutely not.
The Quran states you cannot marry children because they haven't got sound judgment of affairs. Their body's still immature. Things like that. It says you cannot marry children. Blatantly says it. So how can these guys? How can people say that Muslims?
I would also go to extent. Sometimes some scholars, and not even scholars, but sometimes people are not as informed. Muslims say this, and not as informed in regards to Islam. Say as long as the girl reaches puberty, then it's permissible to marry her. I don't follow that opinion either. Maturity. What the scripture, for example, when Allah's talking about the orphans, and He says when somebody's looking after them and they have wealth, فَادْفَرْ إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ, give them their wealth back in أَنَسْتُ مِنْهُمْ رُشْدًا, if you find that they have intellect, sound intellect. So when God's saying that in order for somebody to have possession over the wealth, somebody who's an orphan, and somebody's caring for them, only return that wealth back to them once they have intellect sound. And that's why I believe that puberty is not just a biological or a physiological changing. It's understanding what you're involving yourself
12,
into.
She's gone through puberty now. She's still a baby. She's 12 years old. But she hasn't got it all there. So no chance I'll marry her off at 12 years old. No way. Even my daughter's 17. I won't marry her off now because she's still immature. You know what I mean? Sort of thing. No chance. No way.
And any 25-year-olds are bloody immature.
I'm immature. I'm 50-something years old. You know what I mean? But the point is, right? No one in their sound mind would give their daughters away at such a young age. Marry them off to an old bloke. Yeah. No way. No chance. So I'm not falling for that.
And like I said, to claim maybe Muslims are doing it, maybe other people are doing it for other religions and traditions, it doesn't make it permissible within the tradition that this is what Islam is encouraging.
It's a cultural issue.
Do it, and it's fine. Back to the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
I think also this attitude. I think this is it's a misogynistic. It's a cultural attitude where when we're looking at some of these court reports where the victims were describing that they were using adjectives as cheap and white meat. These are derogatory terms. I do apologize for using them. I'm repeating the words that the victims used in court, and the fact that the easygoing, or the fact that they're not Muslim, or they're not dressed appropriately, and therefore it's just the paedophile groomers were using these words to justify their grooming. Like I said, even if somebody, let me say this clearly, and this is a hyperbole, and it's not exaggeration, even if a woman walks naked on the street, and that's illegal in the UK, even if a woman walks naked on the street, absolutely nothing justifies for a man to go and abuse her. Nothing justifies. And people to say, well, she dressed like that, so she deserves it. No bloody woman deserves anything. It's the man's problem, and it's the man's issue, that the fact that you can't control yourself.
Let's answer some of these questions. Let's have a look. Grooming is done by all creeds and colour. Religion should be irrelevant. It's been going on here in Telford for years, but nothing was done because no one wanted to be accused of racism. And that's the problem as well.
I think you need to put race, everything aside. Wherever is guilty, go in them and just go in there.
Political correctness.
I think the local authority, I think the council, I think there need to be a government initiative focusing on some of these issues, and need to try to explore. When I was looking at some of these issues, there's a lot of interesting socio-economics involved. It's not justify pedophilia. I'm talking about some of the underlying reasons as to why this is happening in some of the most deprived areas within the UK. We're looking at demographically. So sometimes there's areas of high unemployment, low level of education within these kind of ethnic communities. You see high level of crime. And when you're looking at some of these socio-economics and the lack of social mobility, it's easy to turn to a life of crime. So what these people do is selling these girls. They're actually selling girls and making money out of them. I don't know if you saw in the Telford one, where this guy is dead, probably rotting in hell somewhere.
Good.
Where there was a grandfather. Have you seen that one? The grandfather, who in his council house was abusing girls and then prostituting them out from the house. And like I said, it's just we cannot express enough in words how pissed off we feel, how shocked and taken aback we are, and then at the same time we as Muslims have to play that double kind of game where not only are you taken aback by this whole scandal, but then you think, oh bloody hell, now he's Muslim, I'm Muslim, now I have to keep on justifying and why this and it's just insane.
Okay, there's one from Muhammad Saqib Hanif.
I think it's a question there.
Let's go through them because we've got to do in chronological order.
Lee, I'm going to answer that question of yours. In your opinion, is there anything critical in the Quran? I'll answer that.
Do it now. Quick.
Okay. I'll answer your question. Lee, I think that's a really cool question. Is there anything critical in the Quran? I'm somebody who is, when I say obsessed, I am obsessed with studying the Quran. I've memorized the Quran. I've studied it for 6 years. And if you want to look into the explanation of the Quran, it's called the exegesis. That's my passion and fascination. I lecture publicly. I go to universities delivering it. The Quran is like any other scripture. I think there's enough in any scripture to justify almost anything when it comes to if you want to act barbaric, if you want to act crazy, if you want to create an out-group, an other. Now there are verses in the Quran, like there are in the Bible in the Old Testament. I mean, some of the scriptures in the Old Testament are problematic to say the least. Or in the New Testament when Jesus comes and says, I've come with the sword, and he talks about how he tells somebody to sell the possessions and buy a sword because if you look at some of these isolated verses, it becomes problematic. So there are some verses that Tommy Robinson loves quoting, and I want to actually put it out there that if he wants to talk and discuss, I'd be more than happy to speak to him. I've been meaning to for a while, if he possibly sees this. But there are verses, for example, which is mentioned Surah Bara'ah. This is the verse where, the verse of the Quran where people quote, وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُمْ. Kill them where you find them. These are normally translated, and then people will flare up on this point and say, the Quran is saying is that if you find a disbeliever or unbeliever,
just kill them.
Kill them.
Yeah.
They should be killed. And like I said, the whole background, the whole context, this is not the foreign policy of a Muslim. Just don't take it too much time. Is long story short, the Prophet was kicked out of Mecca, and then now he had to go live in Medina for 10 years. Now, and as he's returning on the conquest of Mecca, nobody's actually killed. He doesn't go into the conquest to go and kill people. He goes in and people surrender. Then the Quran is very clear and explicit in saying that not only did you drive the Prophet out of his hometown, those who want to still publicly want to cause issues, meaning they still want to oppose the Prophet. You don't have to believe in the Quran. They still want to fight the Messenger of God, and they want to create public disorder and social strife. And now, remember, the Messenger of God here is a statesman. I mean, he's dealing with the politics of the situation. Then they have Arba'at Ashur. They have 4 months to leave. They have 4 months to relocate, and they will have every opportunity to go live elsewhere if they want to cause trouble. Now, in the Quran even says, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ أَبْلِغْهُ مَأْمَنَهُ. The Quran Surah Bara'ah says that if there's any amongst them from the disbelievers who maybe not had this message that they have 4 months to leave because if they're troublemakers, and then he comes to you, make him listen to the Quran. Listen to what the Quran has to say about the situation. Give him security and then allow them to go to a safe place. Now, beyond that, if these people still want to cause problems, then they'll be seen as a public enemy and will be classed as treason. And in that isolated situation, and given situation, they would be dealt with severely. This was an isolated situation specific at the time of the Messenger of God, and is not permissible within a contemporary understanding or any other time besides the time of the Messenger of God. This was an exclusive command strictly to the Messenger of God. Now the problem is, answering Lee's question, is that when you look at some of these incidents, when you look at some of these verses, decontextualizing why it was revealed and the context that was revealed, there's enough just to justify somebody will turn around and say, oh, just kill them because this is jihad. So the thing is that I wouldn't, even young people, is that if you're going to, I'm not saying that the Quran itself radicalizes people, but I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that a misunderstanding of the scripture, without, like any book, one of the reasons why the Quran was sent with a prophet was to teach people. If God wanted us to understand this scripture, He would have put it into our hearts or downloaded it and we could have memorized it or just recite it. A teacher came with the scripture. I would encourage people that read the Quran is fine, but if you want to study it and you want to act upon His command, make sure you have a normative, mainstream, authentic understanding of the Quran with scholars. And if something you don't understand, ask. So I'm not saying that I'm critical in regards to the Quran itself, but there are verses that can be easily cherry-picked that can cause a lot of issues.
Okay, let's get back to some questions here. That was a long answer. We've got to keep it short. It's alright, don't matter, as long as they understand it. Okay, the worst thing about these people is they do it in secret and lead normal lives, that's what I was saying earlier on a day-to-day basis, which is why they are so hard to detect. They all deserve the maximum punishment when they are caught. Castration, I believe. But I don't know if you're allowed to do that in Islam, castration. Is that allowed?
You know, for those people who...
I would.
I swear to God, if this was like people who want Sharia law, you know, if you get a chance, go to this plug-in. Go to my Facebook page, and I just released a video yesterday of why I as an Imam don't want Sharia law, and explain why, and I explain what Sharia law is. Go on my page, it's called Shaykh Abdul.
Not now.
Hameed. No, not afterwards.
Okay.
And I explain, but what was your question again? I was saying something.
I can't remember.
You just said something.
No, I don't know. No, we're going to say something else now. These groups not even Muslim as they are go against Islam. Okay. Every child deserves a child freed of abuse. This is Brady Breen. So I need glasses. Every child deserves a child free of abuse.
One of the reasons, if you're looking at the... I have so much to say, but if you look at the Convention on the Rights of Child, the CRC, which was set up in the 1980s, one of the reasons why it was legislated and enacted is because now the child is the responsibility of the government. If the rights of the child are being infringed and the parents are not taking responsibility, the government is responsible in the situation and they could be held responsible.
Yeah.
So as a government, as a society, we all need to make sure that we uphold the rights, not just of fellow human beings, specifically of the most vulnerable people in our society. And something that the Messenger of God highly encouraged and emphasized, and the Quran talks about it, is the vulnerable in our society, the elderly people in the community, the disabled people, the young children, the women who sometimes can be exploited because of the vulnerability, are the ones who need to be safeguarded and protected the most, not taken advantage of.
Okay. This is a long one here. David Figgins. David Figgins, mate. As much as I want to argue against it, there is a connection between Asian men, predominantly of Pakistani descent, and grooming young white girls. I've seen it firsthand, and the statistics back this up. It doesn't have anything to do with Islam, but it does have something to do with men of Asian descent, as we know, predominantly Pakistani. The sooner we stop ignoring this, the sooner we can fight it. Deflecting by saying that, oh, well, other people do it too, doesn't help the issue at all. We need to have an adult conversation about this.
I absolutely agree, and I'm saying this explicitly.
Yep, so do I.
There is a disproportionate issue within the community. You know, for example, some of these people, the regions that they even come from in Pakistan, and I'm not saying this against Pakistanis being racist, I'm saying that some of the cultural issues is that on the border of Afghanistan, they have this tradition of bachabazi.
Oh, don't leave that out.
It's nasty, I'm telling you what it is, right?
I know, but there's only a few people that... I'm from that region. I don't do it.
Let me explain what this crap is.
There's individuals that it's small minority.
Right, this is just nastiness to the highest level.
It is.
Is that it's not all people, not all Afghanis and all Pakistanis do this, but in that region, there's this kind of social taboo that people practice. Men, that they get young boys and girls, but these are boys now,
not girls.
who they dress up and then they make them
Yeah.
dance and throw money and then sexually abuse. It's called bachabazi. Go Google this. It'll mess with your head. But so the thing is that when you have this kind of weird, messed up understanding of how you see other people, and then sometimes people have this messed up kind of cultural misogynistic viewpoint of looking down at other people or taking advantage of the most vulnerable people. You know what? I think not only should the law come down heavy on these people, I pray to God that God punish them severely.
Good.
Because not only are they bringing Islam into disrepute, which is a side point, they are exploiting the most vulnerable people.
But those girls can be
psychologically
scarred for the rest of their lives, you know that?
Yeah, you know, as a psychologist, I can't even I feel so sorry.
Imagine when they get into a normal relationship.
You know, I was
It'll never be
looking
normal, will it?
I was looking at this morning. There's some of the girls, some of the victims actually who come into the media now and waive their anonymity and say that some of the groomers are actually still free, and they see them in their cars, and they fear for their lives. So now sometimes they're being relocated, or sometimes will be seen as targets. It's insane. Well, that's so insane. I think from the Muslim community, I'm not saying this is a Muslim issue. I'm saying that from the Muslim community at least, that we need to do more in our community. Meaning, like I said, we need to raise more awareness. I think there needs to be, we have some
vigilante gangs kick the shit out of these guys.
Sorry, that's him saying it, not me. But I'm going to be straight up. Yeah? We spend a lot of money on mosques, right? 5-6 million. We spend a lot of money on things that are not as important. We can pray wherever. We can pray in a normal building. Why isn't some of that money being injected back into the community? Why aren't there psychologists and social workers and a private independent inquiry being set up to looking at some of these impoverished areas? Why aren't people actually going around and seeing what's happening? Why aren't people being paid to do it? Right? Why aren't people working with... there are. I work with organizations up north. I know there are. But I'm saying there needs to be more of it done, and that this needs to be encouraged, and this also needs to be financed also from the community to help deal with this and take matters into our own hands. Because this cannot continue at all.
They can't. Okay, let's go for some of these again. That's how it happens. It's from Trisha. That's how it happens. Buying them first. Basically buying them first. Buying them gifts, buying them drinks, buying them this, buying that. Then they groom them. Yeah?
And especially some of them are special needs. Some of these girls, not only are they vulnerable, but they're special needs. And then they abuse them. And then, some of these girls, something which is a recurring theme when I'm looking at some of the court documents, is that some of these girls feel that they were befriended. They make them into their friends. That, we're here for you. I'm your boyfriend. And so this girl is 12, 13, no life experience, has probably had no affection and love and attention that she deserves as a young child. And now all of a sudden this person is showering you with gifts, phones, food, fancy cars, driving you around. And then you build that trust. And when that trust is broken, it took some of these girls years to figure out what the situation they got themselves into. And it's hard. It's hard. What the heck can you expect from a young girl? Right? Especially somebody who's so vulnerable.
Nice, Dublin TT. I've got the trainers as well. Lawrence Gang, none. Lawrence Gang 1, now Oxford 2. What's that mean? Lawrence Gang 1, now Oxford 2. I don't know what that means. Lawrence Gang. What's that? Lawrence Gang. Could there be a wider concern as a convert to Islam? I'm regularly asked by Pakistanis to revert sisters despite them already having a wife. Could there be a wider concern as a convert to Islam? I'm regularly asked by Pakistanis for revert sisters despite them already having a wife.
Yeah, that's just messed up, man. What the heck? So this guy is saying that he converted to Islam, and then people asking him, does he know any reverts who want to be second wives? You know what? Let me say this very clearly. The Quran does talk about polygamy, and in the UK it's illegal because we're classed as bigamy. But let me be explicit here. If you can raise kids, good kids, in a community that's conducive to the needs of wider society, give them a good education, socially, morally, financially support them, get them into meaningful careers, and be in a monogamous relationship, that's an achievement in the 21st century. Now, for somebody to think that, you know what, let's go around and have multiple wives and it's fine, that's just irresponsible. It's irresponsible for people to think that you know, it's just about producing kids in Islam. It's not just about having kids. It's about taking responsibility for your actions.
Yeah.
And the Quran, I posted about this. I got a bit of hate on it, but I can check my post. I posted this 2-3 days ago. That, you know, when people have this mentality that let me just like breed like rabbits and we'll have like 8-9 kids and you don't give them the attention they deserve. Now, if you can have 60,000 kids and you can give them all the tarbiyah and the ta'aleem and the teaching and the nourishment that they need, that's fine. But a lot of people struggle. It's hard enough raising 2 kids, let alone more.
Okay. You answered too bloody long.
Sorry. Get carried away.
Okay, anyway. There's a gang in Bradford. It's everywhere. It's becoming like a virus. That's from Jasmine Blythe. I would beg to disagree. How are 250 convictions disproportionately high?
No, these are just the convictions. Like I said, 250 convictions.
Yeah, disproportionately high. That's what the guy's saying. How is that high, basically?
No,
one conviction is high.
No, when I say disproportionate, I don't mean disproportionate in terms of looking at the statistics and comparing it to paedophilia within other communities, for example, the white community. I'm saying that in proportion to the Muslim population, it's disproportionate. Like, for example, if you compare the prison population of 15% compared to how many white young people or youth are in the prison, obviously there's more in proportion to the population. And I'm saying that this is a disproportionate amount that seem to be happening from this kind of cultural setting.
Okay, Iqbal says here, victims are neglected. Where is the support from the council, social services and police?
They've been failed collectively by the whole of our society. I think every single one of us have failed them.
This guy, Old Man Carney, whoever he is, right? Old man, you're not as old as me, mate. I think you're talking nonsense and appeasing. You're not dealing with the issues as they stand.
What is the issue?
What's the issue, mate? Come on, tell us, please. Why
don't
you come on camera, Old Man Carney?
Put his button down there. Like, calm down.
No, come on camera and say what he's got to say.
You can come here.
You can come here. You can add someone.
I mean, if you want to. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to sit here sipping on tea and you're going to change the world. What I'm saying is that this is just one form of raising awareness, showing that not only showing people that we actually are passionate enough to speak out against it. And I'm working with institutions and organizations, and I want to raise more awareness, and more money needs to be pumped in from government and from private donors to help raise awareness. So, I mean, if people disagree with our viewpoints, that's your choice. I mean, you have every right to say what the heck you want. But I'm absolutely firm in what I'm saying.
Okay, cool. Lulu McBade, I need my glasses, man. Lulu McBold or McBade, I can't see if that's an L or I. This was going on for a long time, but as per usual, it's not come to light because the people at the top were protecting them, who are protecting them, I think she's saying. There are all sorts of people involved in rings. Yes, sex rings as well, isn't it? When they are disclosed, it's the bottom of the ring who are quite rightly punished. But come on, people, eh? The planet is run by paedophiles. Wake up. The government's full of them, the elites are full of them, and the corporations who run the world are full of them.
I think that's how gangs operate, right? In terms of, and that's a valid point. You don't know who's actually pulling the strings in the background. The people who I think got convicted were the hood rats, people at the bottom, who ended up getting it. But there must be somebody who's actually part of organizing some of this stuff. Somebody who's running the shots. Some of these rings were actually connected. So when I was reading this, is that when some of the victims are rehomed and rehoused, given a new identity, these guys then phone other people in the region and warn them that this girl's coming in or this is what's happening, and then the girl gets abused again. In one case, it's just crazy.
This Andrew Starr Hamilton. I was approached by a grooming gang today. They started brushing my hair and polishing my shoes. Then they straightened my tie. I was so cross.
I understand that's a bit funny, but I think it's slightly touching sensitive. We're trying to discuss something a bit more serious. These groomers are different. What other groomers share these children with family and friends on that scale? No excuse to bring back capital punishment and castration to these evil devils, of course. Okay, I'm not going to say I'm not for Sharia law in this country, but if it was Sharia law in here, these guys would be dealt with severely. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's another subject. That's his viewpoint, not my viewpoint.
The age of consent in the Vatican City was 14, and now there are major corporations on this planet. Whatever that means.
Yeah, no, the age of consent previously was much more younger. Even
100 years ago, you can get married at 10 years old in this country.
I mean,
Victorian times.
if you check in America, for example, New Hampshire, I think the age of consent is
12.
Is 12, yeah, which is one
12.
of the youngest
In the USA.
in America. If you're looking at the age of
Marriage
I'm
of 12.
theological here.
Marriage of 12.
Mm.
At the age of 12. Okay, the grooming gangs are all from countries of all colours, all cultures. It's sick no matter what, and it's time the system needs to make it more known. It's unacceptable punishment, much harsher. I agree with you there, Jasmine. What does Islam have to do with child rape? Your other Muslim friends don't agree with you. It is permissible, indeed desirable, since the creature you worship did it. Really, Emma?
No, I mean, the thing is, this kind of speech just further riles up the
Because
community.
we're the exception.
We're not an exception. Let me make this clear. If Islam encouraged pedophilia or terrorism or any of this craziness, there's 1.7 billion Muslims. If Islam encouraged terrorism,
Someone's ringing your bell.
Yeah, it would have been pretty crazy. I think got somebody coming in.
It's some bloke with a black coat.
Right, finish this up.
Oh, okay, we're going to have to leave it because he's got a guest.
No, speak.
I'm not a scholar. Okay, go on, I'll carry on. Time to hurry up, time to get rid of him. He's just one of those dodgy salesmen. Okay, so based on recent things here, no, the majority of the 3.5 million Muslims in the UK think and act like Riaz. Facts. So the majority of us out there, we hate groomers, we hate pedos. The majority of us, and terrorists, and extremists. The majority of Muslims out there hate them. Okay, he's back, hopefully. 2 seconds, what do you mean? Okay, anyway, okay.
Oh, no.
Beverly says, when in England, abide by English laws, not their own laws from a country they come from. Every country has different laws and those should be abided by. Of course, Islam teaches us, we're supposed to respect the law of the land that we live in, not go against it. Oh my God, nice guy. So what's happening, bro? You big man? You good? Still got a strong grip. Okay, so someone said here, right, where was it? I was reading something about laws of the land, basically, how we should respect it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that people have different laws. She goes, Beverly says, when in England, abide by English laws, not their own laws from the country they have come from. Every country has different laws and these should be abided by.
I don't think so. Muslims or in any way, I mean, Muslims are not even calling for any other laws that they want to follow by. And this whole Sharia law, let's just discuss it, man. This whole Sharia law thing that people keep on saying, that, we want to follow Sharia law and we want these laws to... I'm saying this as an Imam, there's no need for this kind of Sharia law. There's 5 objectives to Sharia. Number 1 is the preservation of life, preservation of your safeguarding your property, your intellect, your mental health, your genealogy, and freedom of religious expression. Some of these objectives are being met in the UK much more than even some of the Muslim majority countries in the world. The fact that if we can here have a mosque built, they have faith schools, eat our food that's permissible. And some of the sectarian violence, we go into, for example, places like Syria, in Iraq, and we're looking at Shia, Sunni, and the split and the schism. People will sometimes lose their lives. I'm not saying the whole Muslim world. There's amazing, beautiful places in the Muslim world, like, for example, like Malaysia. You have places like Indonesia. You have places like Brunei. You have the UAE. Right? You have these are examples of Muslim countries that people can actually just live normally. But the idea that Muslims are creeping here and now these guys creeping Sharia and they want to change laws, and that's not true. We are expected to abide by UK law, and nobody advocates for me. It doesn't even make sense. Why the heck would 3.5 million people want 65 million people to follow their laws?
Doesn't make sense.
It's just stupid. Honestly, it's
and out
just
of those 3.5 million Muslims, how many are actually practicing?
I know what the heck, man.
And how many children are in that 3.5 million Muslims? What?
Yeah.
Maybe 1.5 million children? So, it's a joke.
It's just really insane. Nobody's trying to spread no Sharia. We expect to abide by law. We follow the UK law, and that's what we abide by. Okay.
Sarah Limbert, I was in prison. I didn't know you went to prison. I was in prison with a white girl whose father was abusing her. So she started charging him.
The heck?
Bloody hell. Child abuse, rape goes on all races, religion. It's terrible that you guys have to come and explain your stance on it time and again. Love listening to you though. It's educational. Thank you, Sarah. Britain first. Jada won't be watching this. Okay. One of the Telford groomers tried to use his own daughter in the grooming ring. She refused. He burned her mother's house down, killing people.
I mean, this was just absolutely shocking.
What?
Yeah, I've never seen this, man.
No normal logic applies. Wow.
The fact that a house was burned down and young people passed away in the process. Again, it's just flipping shocking. It's just, when I say shocking, I can't even express how
daughter.
insane. No, the vulnerable person.
No, tried to use his own daughter in the grooming ring. She refused, so he burnt her house down, mother's house down, killing people.
But the one which was in the media case in terms of the house and the young person passing away. So these organized crimes and targets. So when people who don't participate take part in being groomed, then they threaten them. These are the threats they use. That if you don't stop, coming out with us, then we'll rape. These are the words: we'll rape your mother, we'll rape your siblings. These are some of the words that were used when I was looking at some of the court reports. And because now they're socially pressured, you're only 13, 14 years old, you're not thinking properly, you feel scared to go to the authorities.
Grown men, isn't it? You're going to be scared.
Yeah, and these guys use peer pressure and tactics, and then some of these girls are then hooked up onto drugs, like I said, to get them into rehab. What's shocking is some of these girls actually went to the clinics, like sexual health clinics, asking for like condoms and stuff. And you saw on 3, right, in the situation. Even the health clinics weren't even raising, like, why the heck are these girls coming all the time asking for this kind of stuff? Until finally one of them felt really disgruntled and trying to figure out what was happening. So it's like I said, it's just insane. All that's just.
John
insane.
says here, I'm wondering if we can identify the greatest number and the worst offenders of any crime. Like, which community is it that does most to export terror, corruption, poverty, murder, weapons, torture, and equipment? If identifying and defending ourselves against such groups, then it would be feasible to imprison all Tory twits, followed by loony lefties, and then everyone who wants to govern deprive us of the lessons of personal responsibility.
Yeah, and let's be clear. I think when people say that this is an Islamic issue, if you're now looking at the global politics and we're looking at the wider world, a lot of the issues that we see here is that a vacuum was created in the Middle East, and looking at the whole creation of this whole ISIS and terrorism. A vacuum was created from an illegal occupation to looking for weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Once that vacuum was created, we had extremist groups. Tension was brewing amongst the Sunnis and the Shias. Any excuse was used, and then using puppet regimes to outdo one another. The same thing happens in Libya, right? When NATO were involved. So Cozy is now being questioned in regards to how embezzlement and how Gaddafi gave him millions in funding for his campaigns. The fact that these regions are now strategically, I would say, invaded, and the repercussions of that and how it reverberates is that innocent civilians end up paying the biggest price for it. So we need to look at some of the global agendas and understanding that why is this happening around the world, and what the heck are we supposed to do? I think we should be rallying our government. We should be approaching.
Not doing enough.
We need to be approaching other political parties and trying to raise awareness for this stuff. It's just shocking.
Okay, there's a question I don't understand this right. This guy, I can't read his name. It's Kagri Genser or something. Shahid. Oh, Shahid. He was at the FLA match in Birmingham. It was recorded. Football Lads Alliance. He was there.
The splinter group from.
There was two. There was a Democratic Football Lads Alliance and the Football Lads Alliance. They were both marching in Birmingham together. So about 2,000 on each side.
Were hooligans?
Well, somewhere. And it's supposed to be football lads, but I don't know. Anyway. This guy says, Mahdi, whatever that is, 51. O believers, do not make friends with Jews and Christians. They are friends of each other. Whoever shall receive them from you, whosoever shall receive them from you, he shall be with them.
That's a very good
Allah
point.
does not guide the wrongdoers.
This person is bringing Surah Ma'idah, chapter
verse
verse 51. It talks about don't let believers take Jews and Christians as friends other than other fellow Muslims. Again, there's a context towards this. This doesn't mean that I can't have a friend or a colleague. In the Quran, Allah clearly says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم. God does not instruct you to act harshly or in any way towards those people who do not cause you harm, that you act equitably and just towards them. Now these verses are opposing. The first verse was referring to the Prophet's political situation after treason in Medina. And now because some of the military secrets were now being spread out, and that gave a strategic advantage to some of the enemies, the Quran was talking about specific isolated incidents. This is not telling us as Muslims that you cannot take. How the heck would you expect people to understand what Islam is if you cannot even communicate or befriend somebody from another tradition or religion? One last point. When the Prophet comes into Medina, all this talk about this stuff. When the Prophet comes into Medina, this is long before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, long before the Magna Carta in the 12th century. In the 7th century, when the Messenger of Allah is coming into Medina, he signs a treaty. It's called the Treaty of Medina. Some historians say it's one of the oldest written charters of documenting human rights, where the Messenger of Allah signed a treaty with the Jews, Banu Qurayza and Nadir Qainuqa, and the Christians of Najran who lived on the outskirts. These were Christians who believed in the Trinity, and also the Zoroastrians who, not the best definition, but who are like fire worshippers. And the Prophet treated all three. Each one goes into detail, research this. But the point number one in all three treaties is, I will protect your life, I will protect your property, freedom of religious expression, your religious priests, your rabbis will not be harmed, your synagogues or churches or your scripture will not be tampered with, and that we will allow you, and that fact that we will live together. And the Prophet uses the word ummah. You know, the ummah, meaning we say it's a Muslim community. When the Prophet used the word ummah in this context, he meant all the participants who had ratified this treaty, meaning everybody in the community was referred to as this one community. And if, like I said, if the Prophet had good relations with people of other faiths and traditions. I'm not going to gloss over history. There were times where they were actually going to war with one another because they didn't agree with one another, or there were threats given by one to each other. What I'm saying is that the general foreign policy and how the attitude was of the Prophet was considerate, caring, compassionate towards people of other faiths. And that's what the Quran also says.
Cool. Okay, we've got someone from Canada watching, Jamie Cheshire, nice one, mate. People are arguing on there about something, I don't know what they're arguing about. It's an argument about mad and bad imtiaz. Pedophilia is bad. The trauma survivors go through over a lifetime definitely impacts on mental well-being. Yeah.
That's nothing. Mental health is a huge setback and cutback on funding some of the most vulnerable people in our society. So we have people who are struggling with life. I mean, it takes on average about almost 6 months just from GP to get a referral to see the psychologist. And cutbacks in mental health is going to have a detrimental effect nationally on some of these issues.
The question they raise is quite good. It's one-sided. If a man can have multiple wives, why can't women have multiple husbands?
Okay, that's it.
Can you answer that?
That's an interesting
about
question.
babies. In those days, they couldn't do DNA tests, couldn't they? Who the father was?
Let me explain.
That's my
so then now they can do DNA. So now we're Muslim.
Anyway, go on. You can answer that one.
In that situation, that's mentioned in Surah Nisa when Allah says, فواحد أو ملكت أيمانكم مثنى وثلاثة ورباع, that you can marry 2, 3 and 4. These are controversial topics, so I'll explain it properly. You can marry 2 women, 3 women, 4 women if you feel that you cannot be just in this one. The context of this verse is that women it was a highly rife misogynistic society in the community where women had absolutely no rights. When I say no rights, I'm talking about girls being buried alive. Infanticide was a norm at that time. Now, what these people had multiple wives. I'm talking about wives of 40, 50.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So what the Quran was saying this is to reduce it.
My wife's not watching this. Sorry.
When I say reduce, I'm talking about reducing the number. That if you want to practice polygamy, then this is the limit. The Quran was sending out is a cut-off limit, and now you have absolute responsibility. So now some of their husbands had been passed away in war. They had young children. Society was almost would become unstable. And there were vulnerable people in society, so the Quran allowed it. Now, another issue, and there's no religion in the world that gives a solution to this issue, that statistically in some regions, there are more women than men. Yeah. Like if every man got married in this world, then there would be a surplus amount of women. And now imagine, there's a fair amount of men who are homosexual, there's a amount of people who want to remain celibate, there are people who don't want to get married, and there's a prison population of men. Now, what would be the solution be? Now, I'm not just about polygamy. I'm talking about the context of why this was said. I encouraging monogamy, and it's illegal in the UK.
Because your wife will kill you. That's why.
No, but in this situation is that these are some of the contexts. But the Quran says obviously you can't be just and just marry one. And here, why is because it's about responsibility. Responsibility in terms of financial responsibility, making sure you're looking after the children, upbringing them, caring for them, nurturing them, looking after them.
Okay, Keith. Long time, mate. How you doing? Keith Eskif. These dirty, vile people are giving the far right ammo to hate Muslims. There needs to be a Muslim section of the police force to deal with these type of things, not Sharia law. A section within UK police force. As a UK-born white male, the new advert makes me mistrust a lot of people.
You know, I agree. I wish the government would reach out to more normative mainstream Muslims. The problem is, like, you know, I'm sure the government's bloody informed. Sometimes some of the people who they put in charge of Prevent, for example, and you know, some of the people that they get involved in are people who the community have absolutely no trust in. And they already have an agenda, some of these people who are put into high positions. And when it's normal voices like ours, like mine, when I'm trying to raise awareness and trying to get a middle approach, you don't get much of a voice. And I don't know. It's annoying. It's frustrating. Whether people listen to us or not, as an Imam, as somebody active member of society, I will continue raising awareness to the best of my ability. So I'm touring, lecturing in universities, going and giving public lectures on Fridays, khutbahs in different mosques, trying to raise some awareness for some of these issues.
That's good. Shahid Adrian, bruv. I saw a video of him earlier on in Birmingham. Salam, brothers. Just got back from the FLA demo in Birmingham. What a day from being verbally abused to getting hugged by some of the FLA. Wow. Mm-hmm. One of them was shouting at me saying, "Do you want to talk to my daughter?" Some serious brainwashing going on.
You know, nothing justifies this stupidity and behavior. But when I was trying to understand and gain with the mind of how some of these people behave and act, now we're Muslim, right? So we're born Muslim. We understand Islam. Imagine you have no exposure to Islam in a meaningful way. You don't come across many Muslims. The only thing you're exposed to continuously is terrorists, groomers, rapists, and then you think, why the heck are these people around? And then it's almost natural, not justifying it, but it's almost natural to then have a stereotypical view, and then you project that on people. So then you'll have innocent people who come up to you and call you a terrorist or a pedophile, and you think, where the heck are we supposed to start?
Okay, question. This is going to be the last one because it's like 5 o'clock now, ain't it? Bloody hell. I've got to go to a boxing charity event thing.
Where are you going?
It's in town somewhere.
White collar?
Yeah, white collar, yeah. I'm watching it, I've been invited, so. Anyway, Gareth Terry, this is a good question. I hope you can answer this one right. Gentlemen, honest opinion on apostates, please. If someone changed their mind, why the hell would their family and friends abandon them like they're nothing? Unless under the Sharia, of course, in which case they would be killed. Instilling so much fear into people to prevent them changing their mind. Insanity to anybody who isn't insane.
Right, you can't ask me difficult questions and expect it to be brief. I'll try my best to be brief. And since it's the last question, explicitly, and like I said, this is not me trying to pull wool over people's eyes or me trying to give you kind of a rosy answer. Explicitly, apostates should not be killed. Right? There's a freedom of religious expression.
There's no compulsion.
The Quran, nowhere in the Quran, let me say this very explicitly, nowhere in the Quran does it say that an apostate should be killed. وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Who wants to believe, who wants to disbelieve, disbelieve.
What about the no compulsion?
لَا إِكْرَاهَ فِي الدِّينِ. There's no compulsion in religion. You can't compel people.
Yeah, you can't force people.
Now, and let me balance this, is that if somebody chooses to leave their religion, if somebody wants to leave Islam, I would be kind of taken aback, and I would want to understand why. Because again, looking at upbringing, looking at the exposure, bad experiences, and maybe they just don't want to understand the tradition, then that's their choice. They have a right to leave Islam. It doesn't mean that now we go and hunt them or become vigilantes. And this whole thing of Sharia law, if this was people thinking you're only saying this because this is the UK, Sharia law is not as black and white. The thing is, you have to understand and explain. All those books behind me is books of jurisprudence. You have to understand how Sharia is. Sharia is not as black and white in some of these situations. So just because there's a textual evidence that says people should be killed, its application, how it's relevant, how it's applicable, would most likely not even be relevant in a situation. So historically there may be some judgments that have been passed, but its relevancy is not in this world. And the fact that there's a freedom of religious expression, the fact that people have a right to choose to believe in God or not to believe in God, my relationship with them doesn't change at all. If somebody left Islam, or maybe personally I would like to want to speak to him and say like what happened and why. If somebody don't want to be a Muslim, then that's your choice.
Yeah, it's up to them. Okay, folks, we're going to have to love you and leave you. We'll do it again with time, yeah? Whenever you're free. Yeah. This guy's long. Anyway, so thank you for listening. Hopefully we'll do it soon in a month's time. Right?
Yeah, you guys check out my page, Shaykh Abdul Hameed. If you have any questions, anything you want to see, discuss, or you've seen in the media, or something really like annoying, frustrating, or you have questions on Islam, message me directly. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
One last thing. Up the Leicester. Catch you later, people. Goodbye. God bless.